Prepare the force, secure the future. 6 words, 6 powerful words that give us the theme for this year's conference. You're going to hear from some very distinguished speakers throughout this morning who will talk about the conference theme from their perspectives. I thought I'd take a few moments to talk about the theme from a personal perspective. My first ITSEC attendance was 1993. It was actually an international trip for me as I was stationed at the U.S. Army Research, Development, and Standardization Group, UK, in London. I know. What a tough Army assignment, right? Well, let me tell you a couple reasons why that really was a tough Army assignment. First of all, when your job is entitled Standardization Representative, and the country you're in and standardizing with doesn't spell or pronounce standardization the same way as you do, that's a tough job. I was accused of throwing Z's in where there should have been S's. And secondly, I still have the letter to prove this one. The Undersecretary of the Army wrote a note telling me, "Do not come home until the Brits have chosen the Apache as their attack helicopter." Now, as much as I was really enjoying my time in London, there's no place like home. Let's just say I left the UK the day after the announcement was made that the Brits had indeed chosen the Apache as their attack helicopter. Well, during my time in the UK, my oldest child, a son, was in junior high school. He had to take a coach, one of those fancy buses, luxury buses that take people on tours. He took that from the American school. It was about a 45-minute bus ride from our house. The coach carried students from 7th grade through seniors in high school. This is not a good situation to have a 7th graders under the influence of high school seniors for an hour and a half each day. All on his own, my son had given me the opportunity to meet far too many principals in his life. So the wonderful influence of the older teens on the coach, I'll just give you one example. Somehow my son was convinced it would be a good idea to surf on top of the coach. Yes, I did get an official letter for that one. So by now you're wondering, where am I going with this? So let's fast forward to today. That same son is now a soldier with a couple combat deployments under his belt. There's nothing like having your own child go into harm's way that makes what we do in this industry become even more real. Prepare the force is very meaningful to me. I want my soldiers' leaders to be the best trained and prepared. I want my soldier to be the best trained. And I want my soldier to be able to properly train and prepare those sons and daughters entrusted to him so they return home safely from their deployments. Now, as an aside, I do have one favor to ask. If my son's commander, first sergeant, and command sergeant major happen to be in the audience today, please don't hold his youthful exuberance against him at his promotion board on Thursday. Thank you. Last year's conference chair claimed that in some logic-defying way, each ITSEC seems to be a little better than the one preceding it. It is my sincere hope that each one of you will conclude at the end of your time here at ITSEC 2011 was indeed the best one ever. That hope is not unfounded. I've had the pleasure of observing the nearly 300 volunteers from government, industry, and academia work very hard this past year, all orchestrated by my battle buddy, Cindy Turner, this year's program chair. Cindy and her magnificent team provided a program including 24 tutorials and the modeling and simulation caucus yesterday, and will provide 151 paper presentations and 9 other special events over the next 3 days. The papers cover a wide range of topics pertinent to our industry, and the special events promise to be very dynamic. I encourage all of you to take advantage of this rich program: the General and Flag Officer Panel, Warfighter's Corner, the Future Leaders Pavilion, the Serious Game Showcase and Challenge, and as many papers and special events as your schedule allows. Plan plenty of time to spend on the show floor, the biggest one yet. And of course, renew acquaintances with your old and new ITSEC friends. I'd like to express my personal thanks to Dr. Jim Blake and Ms. Tracy Jones, the Army Executive and Principal, respectively. It's been a real pleasure working with both of you and the entire Army team over the past 2 years. I appreciate your guidance and spirit of teamwork to help make this conference a success. Admiral Lewis, I'd like to thank you and the entire NTSA team as all of you continue to perform the magic in the background that makes ITSEC the premier modeling and simulation conference in the world. However, and I think all here in this audience will agree with me, The real thanks goes to all our women and men in uniform who serve us all. This conference is really about you and what we can do to prepare you, the force, to secure the future. Now I'd like to recognize a few of our distinguished attendees. General and flag officers will be recognized separately at the General and Flag Officer panel immediately following the opening ceremony. Please stand briefly as your name is called, and please hold all applause until all distinguished attendees have been recognized. Lieutenant General Keith Walker, United States Army, Deputy Commanding General, Futures, and Director, Army Capabilities Integration Center, United States Army Training and Doctrine Command, and this year's government keynote speaker. Ms. Leanne Ridgway, Vice President and General Manager, Rockwell Collins Simulation and Training Solution, and this year's industry keynote speaker. Lieutenant General Larry Farrell, United States Air Force retired, President of the National Defense Industrial Association. Rear Admiral Fred Lewis, United States Navy retired, President of the National and Training and Simulation Association. Dr. Jim Blake, the U.S. Army's Program Executive Officer for Simulation, Training, and Instrumentation, and a member of the Senior Executive Service. Captain Bill Roto-Rooter, United States Navy, Commander of the Naval Air Warfare Center Training Systems Division and Naval Support Activity, Orlando. Colonel Peter Eide, the U.S. Air Force Chief of the Simulators Division, Agile Combat Support Directorate. Colonel Dave Smith, United States Marine Corps, Program Manager for Training Systems, Marine Corps Systems Command. Mr. Frank DiGiovanni, the Director of Training, Readiness, and Strategy for the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Readiness and a member of the Senior Executive Service. Assisting those executives are the principals, Ms. Tracy Jones from the Army, Mr. Gary Frost from the Navy, Major Chris Stark from the Marine Corps, Mr. Mark Adusio from the Air Force, and Mr. Skip Vibert from OSD. Thank you all.